Hello, Billionauts. This is Grix, among other things, and one of those things might as well be a masochist, because here we are with the steepest point of of Hegel's Phenomenology of the Spirit. It's the fifth chapter, the longest chapter, the most confusing chapter, probably the place where most people quit. I definitely have considered it, but this is not my first time going through this book. This is just the one time that I have actually given this man a chance, and it so far so good. I'm not like as disappointed as I was the first time I read it. I still consider a lot of the conclusions that we get to be it's a very steep and hard road to arrive at self-evident facts or conclusions. However, the level of understanding that you achieve through taking this longer road to arrive at them is definitely different from what one can from the way in which someone can grasp them by just seeing them as obvious and stating them as such. It's been a while since I read this chapter. I've spent the last 2 weeks working full-time as a chef nearby, just to be able to afford exiting this horrible place. And I'm just saying that because of the rain and the pollution, which are two of my least favorite environmental friends. When I live anywhere, I anytime I come out, I'm on the outskirts of London, and anytime I come out, I can smell something. I don't like that. I can always hear something. There is no silence within many kilometers from the periphery of London. And also, it's always raining and always cloudy. I've had this for 4 years now. I think this is by far the longest time that I have ever been anywhere. In terms of a single country, I have only lived 4 years in my own, where I'm coming from, in Spain. But in terms of a single household, this also might be the longest I have been. Not this household, but the one I had before, potentially, because I was there for a whole year. And normally I have never been anywhere for like more than 6 months. Or anyways, all of this is irrelevant to the achievement of absolute knowing and the full spirit, which is what this guy is promising to us. As I said, there's been a gap. I've been working like a bastard for way too long. Not too long, it's just 2 weeks, but it was 2 weeks of 14-hour shifts. So what's over here is a bit blurred, so I wrote some notes. This is gonna be less interactive, and I'm definitely not gonna do like I did with other chapters and go page by page analyzing the texts, because this would be 4 times longer than my longest video on this channel, which I believe is 2 hours. So yeah, I'll take my notes and I'll just give you a quick summary, a quick overview of what we've been seeing so far, and then we'll wrap up Hegel probably in the next few days or week. So yeah, what's happening here? As I just said, we are on the way to the absolute knowing, which is what this guy is promising. Absolute knowing doesn't mean knowing of everything, of every single fact. It just means the understanding of the mechanisms of knowing, what knowing really is, right? Also, by the way, if anyone is new, which I think is a lot of you, I think I just posted one video that said top 10, and it went like, I just went up 300 subscribers. I don't know what happened, but if you are new, this is a read-along that I've been doing for a month and so on, and it's probably gonna sound like gibberish to you if you just watch this video. So I'll link in the description some of the more introductive videos to the Phenomenology of the Spirit. Do not try to watch this video at home if you haven't been prepared with all the other videos, if you haven't been reading the Phenomenology, because this will amount to no end. That being said, so yeah, we have consciousness seeing itself in the particular, and therefore in the world, and seeing the world as a rational place, because it sees itself as an authority for the intelligibility of nature, which means rationality. So the problem is that there's a contradiction, there's a gap, there's a difference between the environment and the particular and the individual. Consciousness sees this contradiction and sees how the environment influences subjects, and yet no environment can account for the fullness of the individuals for the individual. No individual is just a representation of its environment. You are not just your nationality or whatever environment you grew up on. There is certainly something independent from that. And because of that, the next stage is consciousness looking at itself. It's like, okay, so if the environment doesn't have an answer, if in that particular I cannot find anything, then I'm going inwards. And it looks at its own body. But consciousness as a rational thing, as a rational entity, approaches anything that it analyzes objectively, in terms of rationality, as an object to discern, to dissect, to analyze. And this also posits a problem, because by seeing itself as an object, it is just as self-contained as that object, not a subject. And that means that it has no real impact on the world. And all that consciousness is really trying to do is to have an impact in the world, to find out that it belongs to the world. So what we have is a new shift, a new change of consciousness. Once it realizes this, it needs to change. And what it needs to change is that we need to go from theory to practice. From observation, just laid back observation in the Stoic way, to active reason. And how does this look like? In here, different consciousness do not relate to each other as Loren Bonsman, but more like Faust and Gretchen. This is something that Hegel talks about in Faust. They relate to each other as a means to an end. When I get something from you, that recognition, that that thing that makes me real, but I'm only relating to you in order to get that, and you're trying to get it from me. So we both kind of pretend to be giving you anything when I'm just trying to get. This has an end, and that end is very tragic, just like in the story. None of them, the end is that, so we have this tragic ending, and consciousness basically realizes that there is something corruptive about this aptitude, and it needs to be changed, because that recognition, if it's not pure, if it's not real, it won't amount to true self-certainty, which is what it wants to achieve after all. So at this point, consciousness decides to cede its individuality, to give it up for the common good. But although this is a virtuous action, it's done still from sort of like the perspective of the individual. It's still done and it's still guided by self-interest. I'm giving this up so that I can still get the recognition. It's not truly selfless. And this in the real world, as like I'm trying to do something that might seem selfless, my actual self-interest is translated in my own individual values, which are always adjusted to what I want to believe. Many of us believe what we want to, what is most convenient, right? And in that sense, it doesn't matter if you are dying for a good cause, if that cause was convenient for you and you were ultimately believing that because of that. So we are in this point in which consciousness is like, so what can I do now? How can I overcome this dichotomy? Well, the answer that consciousness finds is non-action. And there we are, just frozen. What the fuck do we do? No idea. So at this point, consciousness can look back and be like, okay, what have we been? What's happened? This is, we're at the core of the chapter. If you look back, you have the stages of consciousness. You have consciousness, you have self-consciousness, and you have reason, right? Or the other way around. And how they are united through the dialectic phases, either thesis, negation, and the negation of the negation, or the in itself, the for itself, and the in and for itself, which is kind of the same thing, or the thesis, negation, and antithesis for the dummiest of the dummies. So basically, these phases are going somewhere, right? These stages, we are going to in a direction, again, the absolute knowing that we're talking about. But what consciousness is really looking for is a solution for its feeling of alienation from the world. and the world meaning reality. Because of its dualist thinking, consciousness is always like, particular, universal, subject, object, active, inactive, or passive and active. All these dualisms, ultimately translate into myself and the world, in this massive gap that I can't bridge, that cannot confirm the fact that I exist, which is one of the biggest anxieties in 20th century philosophy. So because of this dualist thinking, we have this alienation, and that's kind of like that's kind of the quest to bridge that gap, right? So once again, from the beginning, we have a thesis, which is that so like as we started, with consciousness in the truth out there in the world. I see people and things, and I see them as solid objects that look real. I cannot see myself yet. I just sense certainty. It's the chapter of certainty and perception, and the other chapter I don't remember the title of, but it was the first 3 chapters. And we are just like, okay, that is the real. How do I get that to confirm that I am also real, since I cannot just look in? And that's the thesis basically. Then we have the negation, which is going from there, from the consciousness of everything out there, to self-consciousness. I am real. I am actually the measure of the real. I see myself as the source of everything that is. And this is sort of like the position of the Stoic. Nothing affects me. I can, it's all here, kind of thing. And this is the negation. And now, at the final stage, we have reason as the measure of the real. A mechanism rather than me or them. The problem is that the reason can still retreat into one or the other, because reason is just that approach, methodology, view, perspective. It doesn't have it's not yet value based, but it's at least engaged on the intelligibility of nature, which is ultimately what consciousness is. So in this engagement with its surroundings, it actualizes the reality of its being through the creation through the creation of work, of objects, through an active engagement. Active engagement means actual work, actual making of things through whatever individual particular skills or talents self-consciousness has, allow it to do this generation and regeneration of objects that are solid, that are outside of it, and that yet carry within themselves a part of this self-consciousness. This allows for a certain level of certainty. It might be a house or a book or a YouTube video, but it's basically an act of creation, and that this can also only be done through reason. Reason is the tool through which we can frame anything and put it out there into the real world, in the sense that it is objective and that we can perceive it, and insofar as we are not within ourselves, or also we're doubting ourselves because we can perceive it, because now the certainty is based on this concept, the concept of reason. I think this is probably the point in which Hegel agreed so much with Spinoza that ended up saying that he loved Spinoza and all of that. So we have this we have this active engagement, this creation of work that ultimately is an active recreation of ourselves outside of ourselves, and that ejects, motivates the response of other self-consciousness. Because ultimately the actual recognition that we get and the actual recognition that we want is from another subject, not from an object that I created outside of myself. Remember that objects are isolated; they bear no impact on the world by themselves. It's the subjects that are able to change in a pattern of movement similar to the self-consciousness that we have, the one that is being traveling through the different stages of the phenomenology. Now, the problem is that this also fails at the very end of chapter 5 with the last 3 sections that I kind of want to do a video apart at some point, maybe when I'm reading Marx. Like whenever I do a read-along of Das Kapital, then we'll look at these 3 chapters more in depth, because everyone talks about how Marx was influenced by Hegel in the bondsman lord and bondsman dialectic, but no one talks about how this longer chapter, and probably less often read chapter by other people, is actually probably more influential into Marx's thought than the previous ones. But the reason why this fails is because the response that we get is still due to the same kind of vanity. It lacks it lacks any other thing other than the self-interest. I respond to what you created, so that you respond to what I create, and therefore, I pretend I read your book so that you read mine, but I actually didn't want to read your book. I'm just pretending to like it so that you read mine and you like it. Or I watch your videos so that you watch mine. All of that kind of vanity, and that basically shows consciousness that there is a problem, that basically we need something else, something external, a kind of universal that will solve this dynamic that keeps going on. And he also explains and shows again how laws are rigid, they are descriptive, they don't fucking help. We look at Kant's categorical imperative. It doesn't work because it's an imperative. You have to accept it as a rule. It's because of that, it's stagnant. It won't change. We need an universal that can change, because any universal determined by the individual and actualized by the individual is bound to become part of the same vanity that he is criticizing here. So the final conclusion, once we realize that no moral imperative will work, is that we need this universal that would be able to be self-determined and self-actualized without the interference of any other individual. And this conclusion leads to a new transformation of consciousness. And this transformation is a transformation of consciousness somehow into the spirit, into the Geist, into the concept or notion, which I think is a much less obscure way of referring to it, and it definitely sounds less mystic, because it actually is not a mystic concept. Most of this book is about actually removing ourselves from superstition, escaping from that, and elevating reason and you could even say scientific thinking, although this is not a very empirical book. But I'm just trying to contrast the idea, because it's very easy to look at the word spirit without having read a book and saying that this book is just trying to show you that there is some sort of like a spirit out there. Certainly Hegel was questionable at some points, but he was not a mystic. And we'll see that as we explore what that spirit looks like on the next chapter, which I'll probably be reading today, and I'll get back with it as soon as I can. I promise I won't take another 2 or 3 weeks to make another video. I got a lot into science fiction at the moment. I'm making a lot of plans. I'm arriving at the end of an era. I live between the beginning. My life always goes between beginning and ends of many eras. Just like self-consciousness, I go up and down and back and forth all the time. And sometimes I don't have time to listen to some dead guy tell me what he thinks is the meaning of the world or the answer to the meaning of life, because it isn't. It's just an interesting book, definitely one of the most important books in philosophy. And I hope you got here. I hope you are reading the book or you enjoyed it if you did. And if you didn't, let me know why. I can't understand why you would not enjoy the book. Mostly with philosophy, I enjoy understanding the book rather than the actual reading experience. It's a completely different exercise from reading a novel. But yeah, that's it. As you can see, I am still packing my books. Not all of them are done. I have quite a few sci-fi books that I got in order to be only reading sci-fi during the summer. So it's not all gonna be serious snob stuff. I got recently called snob for the first time. I think I'm getting my first haters, which is a sign of success. and I'm happy for that. All right, yeah. Let me know if you have any questions. I know I haven't covered everything. If you leave me a comment and I know the answer to your question relating to this book, I will answer it because I have read the book twice now, and I think I understand it more than most people. So yeah, that's all. I hope you have a nice day, and I'll see you on the other side. Thank you, Booktube.